Happy Father's Day. It is, right? Just making sure. Yeah, Father's Day is special. And I think of what a father has to deal with. So much responsibility. You know, I think it takes courage to be a father. Do I say yes? Right. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about Agni Yoga, thoughts in the subtle and earthly worlds. Let me begin today's talk with a quote from Aum, paragraph 439. As you listen to the quote, remember that these are the words of the Master. We are not only listening to his words, but to the color and the quality and the energy of his words, depending on our sensitivities. So keep that in mind, and I'm going to read the verse to you. Again, this is paragraph 439 from the book Aum, about thought. MM said, ugly thought cannot generate a beautiful action. When I speak about beauty, I have in mind, first of all, beauty of thought. Thought has form, which means that beauty of thought must be understood in all respects. For the sake of the cosmos, man must not think hideously. You know that in the subtle world, accumulations of ugliness take place. The battle in the subtle world manifests both achievement and loathsome action. Frightful are the conditions of the subtle world when space is being poisoned with black projectiles. If earthly explosions shake the firmament, then how much more destructive are the actions of subtle energies? People think little about this relationship of the earthly to the subtle world. To speak in earthly language, the consequences of the subtlest energies exceed the earthly reactions many thousand times. They are indeed reflected in earthly sensations, but many explain them only as bad weather. At best, they are attributed to sunspots or to an eclipse. But further than this, humanity does not venture to surmise. So, as I share some information and understanding about this verse today, just imagine, and some of you don't have to imagine, I know this, that you have this experience of when you are visiting the subtle world, when your consciousness enters into the various planes or subplanes of the astral world. Particularly, you're moving from the etheric plane into the astral plane and its 7 subdivisions. And it seems to go from the darkest of the darkest to increasing in light as you go into and finally reach the first subplane of the astral plane. But getting to that first subplane it's like swimming at the deepest part of the ocean where you cannot see anything. And today's oceans, we know, at the floor of the ocean have accumulated the debris of humanity, the messes. And this is what happens with our thoughts, that these thoughts that we think just belong to us, these thoughts are actually ascending, going into the darkness of the astral plane. And this is why so many people who have this consciousness go into these darker, denser, scarier levels of the astral plane to clean it out. And they clean it with their psychic energy. But it's a sacrificial action on their part. So this is what, when we read about invisible helpers, this is what invisible helpers do. Part of their job is they go into the darkness of the etheric and the astral plane, and they begin to clear it out with their light, the light of psychic energy, the light of beauty and beautiful thoughts. So as we think about the 2 paragraphs of this seed thought, we learn that not only thought controls our actions, it also affects the subtle world. In this verse, we are also reminded that ugly thoughts accumulate in this subtle world. If ugly thoughts accumulate in the subtle world, this means it also accumulates in our subconscious mind. Because, why? The subconscious mind, the planes, the sphere of the subconscious mind correspond to the astral plane and the lower mental plane. So we bring those lower thoughts magnetically bring them into the subconscious mind, and these thoughts that fuse themselves are fusing themselves with what's already there, the debris in our subconscious mind. It's very interesting to see how this process works. So I'm going to repeat this, if ugly thoughts accumulate in this subtle world, this means it also accumulates in our subconscious mind, and we are swimming in the debris of our subconscious mind. Every time we have an ugly action, it means we had an ugly thought. If we want to improve ourselves, we must watch our thoughts daily. It is from our thoughts that our mouth speaks, and it is from our thoughts that we act. This is a challenge that each of us can test in our daily life. When we become aware of an ugly thought, we must immediately try to catch it and throw it away, because what inevitably happens if we do not do this, that ugly thought takes a form that then expresses itself through our mouth. And then we wonder later, darn, why did I say that? Because we didn't catch it when that first ugly thought took place. And then imagine these thoughts, they just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. Into what? Into someday we explode into anger. It isn't easy. Don't think that it's going to be easy. Because when we're in that thought, we're so emotionally involved, with anger and maybe even revenge and hatred and all the things that a victim consciousness, has. Is that consciousness going to stop in that minute and say, oh, wait, let me clean this thought up? You have to be conscious of what it is that's going on. Try to think about the source, which is coming from the subconscious mind, the accumulation of debris from the time you were born to the time you are today. All of this debris has become so compacted in the subconscious mind. That's why it's not easy to stop an ugly or negative thought. When you try it, you will first learn that it is almost impossible to do because you are mechanically controlled by the elements of your subconscious mind. Our mind produces thoughts just like a machine. It takes in thoughts from here and there, from the past, from our anger, our jealousy, our hatred, and so on. So because we have these ugly thoughts, our actions and our words, our speech, our communication become ugly and offensive and hurt people. And this is why we have a virtue called harmlessness. Try to practice harmlessness. I once said that the Aquarian age has brought us to a state of confusion, real confusion. I've said that light and darkness are fighting against each other within ourselves. Our light, our darkness are fighting within ourselves against each other. Nationalism and universalism are fighting against each other. Real values and false values are fighting against each other. We must align our thoughts now to the Aquarian age, the new era. Energies, new era energies, in order not to only clean our subconscious, but its crystallized patterns of thinking, so that we can bring our thinking into the new era. It's like going from the darkness into the light. It is so beautiful. It is so magnificent. It's like people who have out-of-body experiences, or people who have died temporarily and have come back. They say they've never experienced something so beautiful, and it's changed their lives. Well, we don't have to die temporarily to have that experience. We can have it right now. We can help clear this confusion by creating new constructive thought forms and by seeing the vision of the Aquarian intentions. The vision of the Aquarian intentions is the vision of Agni Yoga and the founders of Agni Yoga, Nicholas and Helena Rourke, the vision of beauty. MM said, "When I speak about beauty, I have in mind, first of all, beauty of thought." So we must act as refineries in the world and clean much of the confusion existing in mental, emotional, and etheric planes. But before we can engage in this kind of service, and it's a very real service, people that we know today engage in this kind of service. Before we can begin to engage in this kind of sacrificial service, we must first improve ourselves. The most powerful thing in the world is thought. As we start thinking about these intentions, we put into space forms that are built by the energy and electricity of the Aquarian age, which is and will become and has in part become the new era. If we build strong enough visions, ideas, thought forms, and dreams, the energy of Aquarius will come, energize these thoughts and visions and thought forms and dreams, and distribute them all over the world. What kind of thoughts are you creating now, today, and putting into action? Because we have ugly thoughts, our actions and words become ugly. Just think about your daddy. What kind of relationship did you have with your father? If your father has passed, I will guarantee you still have a relationship with him. If you didn't, well, come talk to me. It is. So where are your thoughts now? See, about your father? What are your memories of your father? What about that conversation or those several conversations that you had with your father that you repeat still in your thoughts? Or that moment, something happened in that conversation and that moment replays itself in your own life. See, all of that's part of our subconscious. So today would be the day to think about your father, since it's Father's Day, and clean any negative or destructive or ugly memories that you had of him. And that will release yourself and release your relationship, any negative part in your relationship with him. Because we have ugly thoughts, our actions and our words become ugly. But if we daily watch our thoughts and improve ourselves, we will see the positive realities and results in our life. We will be healthier men and women. Christ said, "It is not the things that enter into your mouth that pollute you. It is what comes out of your mouth that pollutes you." So here's some ideas for us to try, and I think there's like 7 if we get through them. The first is, test your thoughts by asking, is this thought harmless or is it poisonous? And the same thing goes with the word, the verbal word that's coming out of your mouth. Or verbal words today are more prolifically expressed on the internet, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. I don't know about Spotify. What is Spotify? Is that a music? Oh, we'll forget Spotify. So test your thoughts by asking, is this thought or action or word harmless, or is it poisonous? Remember, it's not how many diplomas you have that is important, what your position is, how much money you have in your savings account, but how much you can control and make your thoughts beautiful. Number 2, righteous thoughts. Righteous thoughts are beautiful. Here's something to consider. Sometimes you think about a person or an event, and our mechanical mind says, condemn them, judge them, destroy them, hate them, harm them. So, we're not going to admit to anybody that we think this way. And we would actually say, I've never thought this way. Well, I would beg to differ. It's the degree, of our thought. It's the degree of how we want to condemn that person. In what way do we want to condemn them? Really, really think about this. And do you judge them? I would bet you do. Because I do it myself, and I think, God, I can't believe I did that. It's the basic rudiment of the Bible is do not judge, lest others judge yourselves, right? Who are we to judge somebody else? Just try to learn from them. Don't judge them, learn from them. When this happens, when you find yourself condemning and judging and hating and harming others, immediately cut your thoughts from the roots and say to yourself, these thoughts are not righteous. Let me find a righteous thought. The verse said, the battle in the subtle world manifests both achievement and loathsome actions. When you battle within yourself, within your own ugly thoughts, and replace them with good and beautiful thoughts, now you are receiving energy from the universe and raise your level of consciousness. Great work can be done only if those people who are the foundation of great works have beautiful thoughts. Number 3, thoughts that are charged with hatred and malice are ugly. We know that. I mean, this is basic, right? Really basic. But sometimes our thoughts are charged with resentment and negative feelings. If this is occurring, you are continuously poisoning your aura. That poison is going into the subtle world, and it stays there much longer. It lingers there much longer over eons of time than it does on the earth. No one can say that their thoughts are 100% beautiful. But those who strive, beautiful thoughts are the most important weapons. Imagine beauty being a weapon. Beautiful thoughts being a weapon against obstacles and barriers. Number 4, thoughts that are charged with compassion, forgiveness, and love are considered beautiful thoughts. So now we have something very specific. If you're asking yourself, what indeed defines a beautiful thought, it is a thought that includes compassion, that includes forgiveness, and includes love. When we charge our whole energy system with these 3 thoughts, compassion, forgiveness, and love, we are renewing and regenerating ourselves. The deepest aspects of these concepts is to apply them. Interesting. So, you must bless those. This is a tough one. You must bless those who curse you. You must go to their aid and take them out of their pit of darkness, even if it means endangering your own life. If you want to have good thoughts, make your thoughts compassionate. You will sleep nicely at night because your conscience will be clear. So you're going to say to yourself, from now on, my thoughts will be charged with compassion and forgiveness and love. If you can do this, your thoughts will go out and help to bring in the Aquarian age, the new era of thought. Number 5, thoughts that release people from their pains and sufferings are good and beautiful thoughts. It's like, for example, let's say that your father is ill and you've not really had a good relationship with your father. But it's your duty, because today is Father's Day, to spend some time with him in the nursing home, right? So, a great sacrifice. You spend some time with your father in the nursing home. And after you leave the nursing home, you're a wreck. I can't believe I spent all this time. That nursing home is really a creepy place to be. And then you begin thinking about those experiences you had with your father, those difficult experiences. Do you see how it changes all the good that you did and strengthens the bad, the ugly, the negative, the harmful thoughts? Don't judge others. Just love. If you don't love your father, don't visit him on Father's Day. Sit and light a candle and ask God to bless your father for you. Then you're not involved, except that you've asked for a blessing. or compassion for your father, whether he is here or passed on. Because even if he's passed on, he'll feel it. Thoughts release people from their pain and suffering. Good, beautiful thoughts. The other day I sent a note to a co-worker who had been poisoned by the words and actions of someone she trusted. She carried that idea in her mind for over 10 years. Then one day she told me about it and said, well, it is in the past. Now it's in the past and I have forgotten all about it. For days I was bothered by it, and I finally wrote her a note and decided to be very frank because I thought she could handle it. I told her that she was deceiving herself, that the words of her husband were no longer, in saying that the words of her husband, the actions of her husband were no longer in her mind. So instead we talked about choosing to forgive. I'm part of an Agni Yoga study group that meets once a month. This month we are discussing what Agni Yoga has to say about forgiveness. So I shared some of that with her. And this is a quote: forgiveness on our part prevents us from increasing our negative karma. If a person has done bad things to us, we can do good things to them. Only through such activity can we protect ourselves from the trap confronting us to make negative karma. Such an escape is possible, but it is difficult. After doing this for her, I felt so good because I tried to heal and release her from her pain and suffering. We must try to release a man or a woman, a leader, or anyone who is in gloom and depression from their suffering. In the future, those who release others from their suffering will be considered the real leaders of humanity. You can help others every day. The more you cause others to be spiritually victorious, the more victorious you become. Number 6, thoughts that guide people out of their confusion and problems are beautiful. One day I was sitting in the meeting hall where my teacher had just finished speaking. I was sitting there thinking about what he said, because I didn't think that what he said applied to me. He had put me through some really difficult disciplines for several months, and I was exhausted and feeling badly for myself. And he came up to me and told me to stand up. I did, and he gave me a big hug saying, "I love you." And then he walked on. I was so filled with the light of his love that I immediately became grateful for all the disciplines that he had put me through. You must find occasions to help others, but you must not pump egoism and selfishness or vanity into others. And the last one, number 7, thoughts that elevate the spirit and cheer you are beautiful thoughts. Beautiful thoughts are like vitamins. The more good thought vitamins you have, the more energy you have, the happier you are, and the more harmonious you are in your environment. So, your life is a reflection of your consciousness. Sometimes I will receive letters from our meditation students when they receive their correspondence lessons, and they will say things like, "Many of my enemies are now my friends," or "My home is now calm and peaceful." Or they will ask, "What is the reason for these changes?" And the answer is very simple. Their life is a reflection of their consciousness. So raise your consciousness, and your life and your relationships will change. An Agni Yoga disciple is all about change. The new era is all about change. It is about self-betterment. So are you bettering yourself? The verse said, "For the sake of the cosmos, man must not think hideously. Those who think hideously pollute space. With ugly thoughts, we pollute ourselves, our environment, our children, our wife and husband, and so on. Our hideous thoughts create certain poisons." So here's an analogy. You spread poison at the table of life. You mix it with your food, and you eat it. 1/2 hour later, you kill yourself. This is exactly what is happening on the planet. Ugly thoughts are creating a sphere of dark poison around the planet in which we are breathing, moving, and having our being. By magnetic attraction, every ugly thought is pairing by association with ugly thoughts. This is what's going into our subconscious. These associations form a dark magnetic cloud. Of course, good thoughts also do this. Good thoughts are accumulating in our higher mind, and bad thoughts are accumulating in the lower mind. When you are having ugly thoughts, you are pulling energy from the lower mind, and when you have good thoughts, you are pulling energy from the higher mind. See? Energy from the lower or from the higher. The quote said, "The battle in the subtle world manifests both achievements and loathsome actions." The subtle world is a space. Now just imagine this. If you've not been there, if you've not traveled out of body into these other places in the subtle world, imagine you being there now. And imagine the subtle world in which millions of entities exist. When you send beautiful thoughts into space, you are helping the entities in this subtle world nourish themselves. Conversely, if you are sending poison, you are poisoning your ancestors. You're poisoning your dear father, your dear mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, great-grandfather, and so forth. You are extending a poisonous exhaust pipe to family members who have passed away. They are smelling these ugly things. Behind the control of thought, there are many realities to be considered. So the best time to prove ourselves that we are developing beautiful thoughts is the moment when we find opposition and confusion around us. If we want to send good thoughts, sit down and send good thoughts. Especially send them to those whom you hate or those who hate you. In your creative imagination, sit and say to one who harms you or hates you, "You know, I love you. Do you love me?" See the person saying, "Yes, I am sorry for past hurts, and I love you." Such kinds of activities are effective. You do not even need to be a close friend or associate with those with whom you have conflicts, but do not keep negative tension with them forever. It will cause cancer and tumors and various other disturbances. So in closing, if you want to have an Aquarian age consciousness, a new era consciousness, you are going to grow a new mind. A new mind. And gradually cast off that old mind. Christ said, "Let your mind be renewed and regenerated." So we must build our own mind with our own thoughts and attitudes. It is better to regenerate ourselves now rather than later. We must create a new mentality, a new mind. It is like having a polluted pool and then releasing a river of clear, delicious water into it, wiping away all pollution from the pool. The pool is then clean and pure. Higher ideas and inspirations now start reflecting in that clean pool. And that's it.